Hello guys, welcome back to another episode. There is a message that I received, then I had to ask one of our admins to give us a translation. The message reads like this. Hello brother Nashi, how are you? Can you please post for me? I am a 35-year-old woman who got married, and it has been so many years since I have been married to my husband. At first, after my grandmother had taught me how to make that love potion, after she had given me a lot of herbs so that I can mix those herbs with the food that I used to cook for my husband, I thought that this was going to be a marriage of my dreams. But now, my brother, I do not want these things anymore. I think that the reason why when God created us, made a man to be the leader of the house, he knew what he was doing, because ever since that I gave my husband all of those herbs that were given to me by my grandmother, I don't even respect him at all. And after he had lost all the respect that I had for him, then I lost control, my brother. I started cheating on my husband. Even now, I am still cheating on my husband. I don't know how many times I have cheated on my husband. And this thing, my brother, my story, it is still an ongoing story, because even now I am still cheating on my husband. The last child that we had, me and my husband, the child does not belong to him. This child that I had, it does not belong to my husband, but this child, it belongs to one of my boyfriends. And my husband, he knows everything that is going on, but he does not have the strength, because the way this herbs works, it is like whenever my husband looks at me, he sees a lion, so much that he will get so afraid. All of his relatives, they do know, but my husband, if they try to speak with him so that me and him can be separated, he cannot be separated from me, because those herbs that I was given by my grandmother, it's like our hearts were tied to each other, but I have control over him. I know how to control my emotions, hence I am able to cheat on him. But as for him, he cannot control his emotions. The only thing that he knows is that he loves me no matter what. It doesn't matter if one day, if he finds me sleeping in our matrimonial bed with another man, he will still loves me, because of the herbs that I was given to by my grandmother. My story in detail is like this. I got married to a man who really loved soccer, and he had big dreams for playing some very big clubs. So he used to come home late at night, and whenever he would come back home, he had that attitude of him not wanting to be asked from where he was coming from. Then he started to have an extramarital affairs. This was just too much for me, since we were newly married people. This made me to feel so bad. One night I waited for him. I didn't want to fall asleep. I wanted to ask him the reason why he was cheating on me. He then said that the reason why he was cheating on me, it was because he felt as if I was not a complete woman. In our culture, there are things on a woman that are supposed to be done, especially on her private parts, so that she can be a complete woman and she will be able to satisfy a man in bed. So I grew up in the city. All of these things no one had ever told me. Even my mother had never told me. On that night when I waited for him, he insulted me, and he told me that he had wasted his money by paying for my bride price, because him and I, we had promised each other that we will only get into bed after he had paid for my bride price, in which he did. But when we slept together on that night, even though he didn't tell me that he was not satisfied with the way that he had found out my private parts to be, but on that night, after I had confronted him about his cheating ways, that is when he came out into the open, and he told me that the way that I was not a complete woman, so I was supposed to return back to my people so that they can make me a complete woman. I then spoke with some of my cousin sisters, who spoke with my grandmother, who was in the villages. So I returned back to my grandmother, because this kind of a thing, it was really shameful for me to speak with my mother. When I was back in the village with my grandmother, then my grandmother trapped a bird, those birds that only fly at night. She burned that bird. Then she started to use those ashes on my private parts. That is how I became a complete woman. After she had successfully done that thing on my private parts, I thought that it was time for me to return back to my husband, because at that time I really loved my husband so much, even though he had broken my heart. But my grandmother said that I was not yet a complete woman. This was just stage one. My grandmother told me that she had spoken with one of her friends who was well known for giving a lot of women love potions and other bewitching potions that you can use to strengthen your marriage. So me and my grandmother, we went to her friend, and my grandmother told her friend about my issue. She just laughed. So at her compound, there was a dog that had little puppies. My grandmother's friend then told me that I was supposed to go and take one puppy that could not see yet from her dog that had recently given birth to the puppies. That was what I did. I went there and I took the puppy, and I went back into the kitchen where my grandmother and her friend were sitting. When I handed my grandmother's friend the puppy, she then went ahead. She then mercilessly killed that helpless puppy. She grinded the eyes, then she cooked the eyes and mixed it with a potion. She told me that I was supposed to go and throw that dead puppy in the toilet. I then went and I threw the puppy in the Blair toilet. When I came back, my grandmother's friend, she had already mixed those grinded eyes that she had taken from that puppy into some potion. She then gave me, and she gave some instructions to my grandmother. All of those instructions, I had forgotten them, but my grandmother told me that I was supposed to write on a piece of paper, so I did. After the potions had been given to me, I went back home. When I returned back to the city, what I'll do is that each and every evening, when I'll be preparing the food that me and my husband were supposed to eat on that night, I will cook, then I will separate the food, then I will put my food aside, then I will go on cooking. As I will be cooking, I will just sprinkle some of those herbs in the food that I wanted to give to my husband. I did this for many days until I saw one day my husband, when he came back, he knelt down, then he started crying, and he apologized for all of his past mistakes, but he had broken my heart so much. At that time, I was really happy to see that my marriage was getting back in order. I thought that things were forever going to be okay. At first, I was really excited having a submissive husband, but I didn't know that this was not God's intention for you to have a submissive husband, not just any kind of submissiveness, but spiritual submissiveness. Anything that my husband wanted to do, he had to ask as if he was asking his mother. This thing, my brother, I thought that for me it was paradise. I had finally reached that magical, wonderful place in my marriage, but slowly but surely it was affecting me. What I started to do is that sometimes I would not even cook for my husband, and when he will return back from work, everything will be waiting for him. I would not even have made the bed. He will start by making the bed, sweeping the house, whilst I'll be busy playing with my phone. And as time went by, on that phone that my husband had brought for me, I then started to meet up with a lot of guys, and most of these guys, they used to propose love to me. But at first, I didn't want to cheat on my husband. But the way that my husband was so submissive towards me, I then started to flirt with a lot of men, because I saw that even if my husband would come across any messages as I'll be flirting with other men, he never questioned me or asked me anything. So I kept on flirting with a lot of men until I started to meet all of these men physically. That is how I started cheating on my husband. My brother, this thing has been going on for many years, and I wanted to stop, but unfortunately my grandmother and her friend, they have since passed away, and I don't even know What should I do with my husband? Because the way that my husband is so submissive towards me, it is so irritating to me right now. Yo, dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to me by one of our listeners. Then I had to ask our admins to give us a translation.